ZZ109FM Talk Radio. This is Elsie Jenkins. The year 2026, a lot of things have been going on in the world, and a lot of focus is on Nolan Wells. What happened to you? What's going on with this world? A lot of information is out there. And as we sip on coffee this morning, we try to figure out what's right and what's wrong, contradicting information. But I'm a firm believer, if you go by the facts, if you go by what you know and put common sense in place, speculation, we can put two and two together. So let's go. Let's tackle this situation first. Let's look at it on the scientific level, because we want things to make sense. And if there was any kind of foul play involved in this situation, I'm pretty sure that these people may or may not be smart enough to know these things, because these things I'm about to bring forth clearly tell experts information about what's going on with the person they find floating in the water. So let's take a quick look at Horn Island to begin with. Ocean Spring High School, that's the high school that young man went to, Mr. Wells. It's from his high school. It's a 3 or 4 mile drive to the Ocean Spring Harbor or Marina. That's just the high school. Not to say that his house was further away or closer, but we're giving you an idea of where this place is that you have to go to mingle and have fun with your friends. A realistic approach. If you look at the situation here, you're going to see clearly that if they were to leave from the school and meet together at the school and drop the cars off at the school, at the high school, it's a 3 to 4 mile drive to the Ocean Spring Harbor Marina. That's just to that point. Now, to get to Horn Island, and this is not the first time that any of these people have been there. They've been there multiple times. So you know if you're going to Horn Island, you're riding there with someone and you're riding back. There's no in between to get the return trip home. So the boat ride to Horn Island is roughly 10 miles offshore. 10 miles. So in a small recreational boat, that's 30 to 45 minutes, depending on your speed and the water conditions. The total travel time is around 45 minutes to an hour. 45 minutes to an hour from the high school to the island. So, common sense tells me that if I'm going to this island on a boat, then I'm returning from this island on a boat. There's not going to be any swimming back to the pier, to the docks. That option's not an option. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand this. If you are a football player with intelligence to go out there and play the sport, a football player has the intelligence to know that he's not going to be able to swim back home. You relied on transportation to get there, you're going to have to rely on transportation to take you back. So we're not going to sugarcoat anything in this situation. So saying that, oh, he jumped in the water and the current got him, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. Let's keep moving on, because we also want to understand the fact that his body took time to be found. And this is important because if you did commit foul play and didn't know these particulars about water and the human body, you're going to get caught. You're going to get caught up real quick. Why? Because the body goes through a process when it's in the water. And the process takes time. So if you hold a body for a day and a half and put it in the water, you're not giving it enough time to go through the process to be in the water for a day and a half. If the body's found the same day you put the body in the water, there's a lot of things that should have happened to the body that hasn't happened to the body because the body hasn't been in the water long enough. And what's important is these things that happen to the body happen faster in warm water than if you was in cold water. These are things that when people are committing foul play don't think about. They think they're outsmarting the system, outsmarting people. But see, these things right here are specific. These people in the forensics field work on this type of situation all the time. They know what they're looking at. They know what to look for. Let's dive into this real quick so you'll understand why the body wasn't found right away. Submersion drastically alters the process of decomposition compared to a terrestrial environment. This field is known as aquatic forensic taphonomy. The unique properties of the aquatic setting, temperature, current, and chemistry dictate the rate at which the tissue changes. Understanding these submerged changes is necessary for forensic investigators attempting to determine the time a body has been spent in water. This is very important because if his body's been in the water for almost 48 hours, then he's going to have 48 hours worth of situational evidence on his body. But if his body was put in the water and the body was only in the water for 6 hours, you're not going to have 2 days worth of situational evidence on that body. And these forensic people are going to be able to tell right away whether he was just placed in there a few hours before they found him, or if he was submerged in that water for a few days. They'll be able to tell. Let's see what they're looking for. Now, the body, upon entering the water, the body typically exhibits negative buoyancy and sinks. So as you can read here, the body normally sinks once it goes into the water initially. This is why you're not going to see a body the first 12 hours, 20 hours, 18 hours. Because right now the body's at the bottom of the water and it's going through a process. Now the lungs fill with water and that brings that body down to the sea level. That water in the lungs. Now, since the body's density is slightly greater than water, it settles on the bottom sediment. Submersion immediately begins rapid body cooling, where the surrounding water accelerates the drop in the core temperature. This quick loss of heat, termed algor mortis, directly affects the initial rate of internal chemical and bacteria activity. This is very, very important information because anyone that's committing foul play that puts a body in the water the same day is not allowing this process to process. Let's keep it moving. External physical change begins almost immediately as the skin absorbs water through osmosis. The most noticeable early sign is maceration, commonly referred to as washerwoman hands. Washerwoman hands. The keratin layer of the palms and soles become waterlogged, leading to white, wrinkled, and thickened skin. This wrinkling can appear at the fingertips in as little as 20 to 30 minutes in warm water. Over a period of days to weeks, now pay attention to this, over a period of days to weeks, this macerated skin may detach from the body in a glove-like or stocking-like fashion. So if you're not leaving this body in the water for the time it needs to be in the water, then this process isn't going to happen. Now this body was only in the water for almost 48 hours. Maybe bloating had taken place because that's how the body was found in the water, bloating part. But was there any detachment of the skin? That's a question. Now, this is a non-putrefactive change, meaning it results from water saturation rather than bacterial action. The timeline for maceration is one of the earliest physical markers forensic specialists use to estimate post-mortem submersion interval. These external changes precede the more significant internal processes of decay. So, on the average, someone not planning an event of mischief, what do you call it? Someone that's going to do something to somebody is not thinking about these things if they're leaving the body out of the water for 24 hours. Because the longer you wait to put a body in the water, the less chance these things have to happen. You're telling on yourself the longer you leave that body out of the water. Let's go. Once the body is submerged, internal biological decomposition, known as purification, begins in earnest. This process is driven by the anaerobic bacteria that naturally reside within the gastrointestinal tract. These microorganisms, no longer controlled by the immune system, begin to consume the soft tissue of the body from inside out. This consummation creates metabolic byproducts, primarily gases such as methane, hydrogen sulfide, and carbon dioxide. These gases accumulate and become trapped within the body cavities, particularly the abdomen and the chest. As the volume of trapped gas increases, it dramatically lowers the overall density of the body. And according to Archimedes' principle, this decreases the density leads to a significant increase in buoyancy. The body, which initially sank, eventually becomes buoyant enough to rise to the water's surface. So we understand how you don't see the body on July the 5th, but you see the body the morning of July the 6th. It takes a process for that body to rise from the seafloor up to the water. Now, common sense is supposed to be common, but I'm going to tell you right now, for some people it's not. And that's why this show exists, to break some things down so people can understand what's going on. The time it takes for a body to refloat is highly variable, but is directly linked to the water temperature and gas production. In warm water, this process can occur within a few days. But cold water severely inhibits bacterial growth, meaning refloating may take some weeks or months. So with our situation, we realized this water was pretty warm because his body showed up within 48 hours. When the body surfaces, it often floats face down because the chest and abdomen are the most buoyant sections. Eventually, the pressure from the internal gas can cause tissue to rupture, releasing the gas and causing the body to sink a second time. Now, it sounds like it didn't get to that point. They did searches and looked for the body the morning of the 5th, the afternoon, the evening, but the body didn't come up from the seafloor until the morning of the 6th. It makes sense. It makes common sense. Let's move on. Forensic specialists used the observed physical and biological changes to estimate the post-mortem submersion interval, the PMSI, which is the time elapsed since the body entered the water. So people out here that think they're fooling the system and trying to fool people, they already have ways of telling how long something has been in the water. They utilize a scoring system such as the Total Aquatic Decomposition Score, which quantifies the degree of composition, maceration, and adiporous formation. This morphological assessment is often correlated with the water's accumulated degree days, ADD. Very important, the water's accumulated degree days, a measure that accounts for water temperature over time to improve the accuracy of the estimate. So you can sit around and you can act like you don't know nothing. But the facts are going to come out. The truth is going to come out. And if you did anything to tamper with the truth, it's going to come out. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to keep up with what's going on here. You just have to have the integrity to put information out that makes good sense with the information that we can come up with ourselves. Drinking coffee here, talking about Nolan Wells' situation. A young man whose life was cut too short. But I'm going to tell you right now, Nolan, your body, what's the autopsy teams, the information they can gather is the best tool to determine what happened to you. Let's move on. Let's get to the common sense part about being parents. I'm not going to let my child stay with anybody unless I'm familiar and I know you. If I don't know your name, my child's not staying with you. If I don't know where you live, my child's not staying with you. And if I don't feel right about you, my child's not staying with you. So I'm pretty sure they knew the parent's name. They knew what house they lived in. And they also had their phone number. We keep talking about cell phones, but let's take cell phones to another level. Do the parents have each other's number? I know if I'm leaving my child with somebody, if you have any problems, you got my number, call me. Hopefully you don't need to call me. My son or daughter is going to act accordingly when they come to your home and respectful. You shouldn't have to call me unless there's a problem, unless somebody gets hurt. These things happen. It's called an accident. But if someone has an accident or is missing and you don't call me, what's wrong? What happened? Where's the communication? Why do I have to hunt you down? See, that's where the red flag for me begins. I entrust you to take care of my son or daughter. And I'm pretty sure that you will let your son or daughter come stay with us, because you trust me to take care of them while they're in my care. Not to let them get hurt and then don't call you if they have an accident. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any common sense. And parents know that my door is always open for you to communicate if my son or daughter is over your house acting a fool. I'll come get him. I'll come get him right away. But when you look at the foundation of this family, it's a lot of repetitive communication, which is what you usually hear when you have parents that are concerned about your well-being. They repeat the same things over and over again. And even though you're 18 years old, you're still going to hear the same things you heard when you were 17 and 16 and 15. Nothing's going to change with these rules. Let's go. Let's keep digging and diving into this while we're drinking this delicious coffee. Now, if we look at this situation overall, it's been 16 days since Nolan Wells, an 18-year-old, and his friends went on a 4th of July boat trip to Horn Island, a popular destination for holiday revelers off the Mississippi coast with no shelter, no facilities, and no communication. This is a very important statement because I'm bringing, as an adult operating a boat, I'm bringing underage teenagers out to a location where there's no shelter, no facilities, and no communication. It's not the first time we've been here. We've been here multiple times. So this information is common knowledge to anyone operating a boat heading to this island. Common knowledge. So there's no misrepresentation in regards to where we're going. Let's take a look at this timeline. On the evening of July 3rd, the teen made his family salmon for dinner before leaving to spend the night with his friends ahead of the holiday weekend. It was a hug, kiss, and he left, his mom had mentioned. And like many other Americans, Mr. Nolan Wells set out to hang out on the 4th of July with his friends on the water. There's nothing wrong with that. It is clear what he's going to do. It's one of those situations where we have to have communication. As I look at you and I tell you that you're going to go somewhere where you have to be mindful of your safety. This father mentioned over and over again, he said, when you go down there, you come back with the same people. He mentioned this over and over again. When you go down there, you come back with the same people. Now, red flag number, well, let's do this in the order of what we have here. Let's take a look here. He joined his friends for a boat trip to Horn Island. And it's a boat trip. We talked about it. It takes 35 to 40 minutes to get there and 40 minutes to get back. It's a trip. You can't take a car to get back. You can't take a bus. You can't take a plane. You have to go there by boat and return by boat. So to leave someone is a risky decision if you don't confirm how they're getting back. You're responsible as you take them there. You don't come back with them. You're still responsible to make sure that they have a ride to get back. Just leaving them and saying, oh, well, it's his problem. That's not how the chain of responsibility works. You have to pass it on to another boater and say, hey, Bill, Jim, or hey, boaters. I'm going to tell you now, if I'm on a boat and I don't know those boaters, you're not going back with them. It's got to be somebody I know that I can confirm and trust is going to be able to pass on this responsibility of making sure you get back. I know Bill. I worked for him for 20 years. We were in the military together. I know he'll make sure you get back safely. Now you have an accountable conversation as to what happened to him, to law enforcement. But to just leave and not have an accountable conversation with any boater, red flag. Something's very, very wrong with that situation. Now, Mr. Wells joined his friends for a boat trip to Horn Island, a federally protected barrier island known for its untouched beaches, shifting shoreline, and quiet isolation. It wasn't uncommon for Wells to visit the island with friends, according to his family. This is something that they entrusted him to do, and they didn't feel like he was irresponsible to a point where he couldn't go without them going with him. And they had enough trust in the people he was going to spend the night with to be able to pass the torch on to make sure that he goes where he has to go and gets back. If there was any doubt in those parents' mind, they wouldn't have let him go. By the time the group returned to the mainland that afternoon, a day that began as a holiday celebration took an unsettling turn. Wells was not with them. His family reported him missing the night of July the 4th. July the 4th, the night, after they received a phone call around 11 p.m. from one of his friends. You know, it's the 4th of July, so you would expect someone that's out during the day to still be kind of hanging out during the wee hours in regards to, you know, the holiday. You know, the question is he spending another night? It doesn't sound like he is. It sounds like they're expecting him to return. They reported him missing the night of July the 4th after they received a phone call around 11 o'clock from one of his friends. So prior to that, they had no feeling or knowledge that anything was wrong until someone made a phone call. See, that someone who made a phone call is very important. Why are you calling so late? Why are you calling now? Is your conscience affecting you? Do you know something? Because they returned GPS on their boat. I'm getting ahead of myself. But GPS on that boat, which that boat had GPS, shows that boat returning at 4:30 in the afternoon. 4:30 in the afternoon. When that boat hit that dock that afternoon, it's clearly that his brown skin was not on that boat. So who is this person that called at 11? When did you notice that this person was missing? Was it at 4:30 when he didn't come back? By the time it starts getting dark and the boat stopped coming from inland, from the island, you start to worry because there's no way to get back if there are no more boats hanging out at the island as the sun starts to set. Now, the parents at this point believe that their child is in good hands, that their child is under the supervision of responsible people. But a call at 11 o'clock at night lets them know that that's not the case. Now, as the first hours passed without answers, we're talking about 11, 12, 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock, no response. Wells' mother turned to social media sharing desperate appeals for information about her son's whereabouts. And then in a post on the morning of July 5th, the mom said she and her husband had possession of their son's cell phone. And they traveled to the island to search for him the morning of July the 5th. We know, based on our first conversation in this show about how the body works when it goes into the water, that if he was anywhere in that area on July the 4th from 4:30 until that morning, it's a good chance his body was at the bottom of the seabed, because that process that we talked about had really churned and got to the point where it pushed his body up to the ocean level of the sea. It's a process. It takes time. The body's got to kind of absorb the water. Things happen. The body then floats up to the top. But not enough time it went by. So when they go and search that island, they could go from one end to the other, and they're not going to find anything in regards to a body on the island, nor are they going to find anything outside floating. They're not going to find anything. Not based on this scientific information we just talked about. So you can imagine the frustration and the heartache that they're going to feel on the 5th, because they're wondering, well, where is he at? But let's take a look at this. Tashima Hands, the mother of one of Wells' friends, retrieved the phone for the family, and after tracking it, used Snapchat to a house where a lot of people were gathered. So a lot of people were gathered at this location for whatever reason, but this phone is at this location. This young lady said it took about 15 minutes for someone to find the phone and give it to him. Let me tell you something. If your child comes to stay with me, their belongings, a lot of times their belongings are in the room with the other child that they are friends with. But in this case, the cell phone was on a boat. And the cell phone was retrieved from the boat to a vehicle and transported to this house. Where else would you put the cell phone but on a counter in the kitchen, on a counter or table in the living room? But it wouldn't take 15 minutes to find a phone that doesn't belong to you, that clearly needs to be retrievable for either Nolan or the parents once they reach out for their phone. Now, what's not clear about this is the house. Is this the house that he stayed the night over? It sounds like it is. If it is the house that he spent the night over, why would it take 15 minutes to find a phone? Doesn't make sense. Now, if it's a house that he didn't spend the night over, why is his phone here? Why is his phone in a different residence, a different address? They should not have his phone. Whoever is watching over him when it comes to the responsible adult, that's the person that should have his phone. See, there's a red flag here about they had to use Snapchat to go find the phone. But which house did they find it in? Because if it was just a random house of one of those young men on the boat, red flag. Why do you have his phone at your house? He didn't spend the night here. A good question is, which house did you find the phone? Because if it wasn't the house that he spent the night at, red flag. There's something clearly wrong with this situation. And it took you too long to find the phone. Let's keep it moving. Now, the mom says she went through her son's phone and it struck her as too clean because there were no videos or pictures in Snapchat from the day he was on the island. Well, we looked at this island and we took a, small gander at the cell phone service out there. And the cell phone service is going to be sporadic. AT&T and Verizon is capable of reaching, but you have to be certain parts on the island to get a signal. So, let's be realistic and have a smart thought about things. You don't need cell phone service to take pictures. You don't need a cell phone service to do that. Or video. So it's hard to believe that there's no pictures or no video from his phone up to 4:30 in the afternoon. Because we know by 4:30 in the afternoon, he's not with the party returning. Something's going on. Quick question I would like to ask is, if I hand you my phone, you're not going to get into it unless you know the password. And I'm pretty sure that if the mother is as close to her son as I am close to my friend, I know how to get in my friend's phone. I know the password. There's nothing to hide between me and that person. The same would probably go for the mom and the son. It's not unusual, but if you have a clear communicating relationship with someone, this information is something that you both can share because there's nothing to hide in the relationship. Now, is that the same for friends? Because I'm like, in order for them to delete videos and pictures, they have to be very close to him to have access, to gain access into the phone. That's the only person who's going to be able to get into this phone and gain access to the videos and the pictures is someone that's close to him. Because someone that's close to him may have that information to get into the phone. So the red flag here is very simple. If anything was deleted, it was deleted by someone close to him. And then why would someone close to him delete this information? Well, in that picture of those people on the boat, one of those people is very close to Nolan Wells. The question is, which one? Which one is it? Because out of those three young men in the picture, one of them gained access to his phone. They had his phone. Did they know how to get into it? Is the question. This whole situation, I tell you, it brings up a lot of questions and red flags and, woulda, coulda, shouldas. But if I have your phone and you decide to stay on an island, I'm going to secure your phone for you. If you look at this picture of this young man on the beach with all these people, you're going to see, well, you could get preoccupied and get with a group of people and start to chit-chat and have a good time. But in the end, your boat that you came there with, if they decide they want to leave, they have to at least inform you that they're going to go. Just taking off and not giving you a warning. And then question, why did these people, why did they leave without him? Let's keep moving. We're going to get to that. So let's talk about the sheriff out there, Mr. Ledbetter. From the people we've talked to, it sounds like he chose to stay on the island with the assumption that he was going to ride back to the mainland with someone else. Well, let me tell you something. Before we go any further, good law enforcement, during any type of a call for service, is going to have notes in their little notepads that they carry around. And then once a situation turns into a possible criminal situation, they're going to start taking statements. So once you are transformed into a possible criminal situation, there are no more assumptions. You're going to be taking statements from these people. Because once you start taking statements from people, you either tell the truth or you tell a lie. Now, if you tell the truth, you're fine. But if you tell a lie, this statement can come back and bite you in the ass later. That's why it's so important for law enforcement to be on top of things right away and not wait days. When you get a missing person report on the 4th of July at 11 o'clock, first thing I'm going to do as a law enforcement officer is go speak to the boat owner that took him to the island. I'm going to communicate with that person first because you took him there. Once you got there, what happened? Now, this is the hard part about law enforcement. Sometimes you have to be proactive. Because you're either doing a missing persons call or you're not. If you're doing a missing persons call, there's no problem with getting a statement from the person that operated the boat that took him there and didn't return him. This statement doesn't provide any type of admission, but it does solidify at the time your reasoning for going to the island and leaving him there. If you change your statement later, it's going to be a problem because you've already filled out a statement. We're just doing an investigation. No one's in trouble here. We're just doing an investigation and we're trying to find out what happened to him. You know. So, you refusing to do a statement, that should be a red flag on an officer doing an investigation. You know, if you've done nothing wrong, why would you refuse to do a statement? No one's in trouble right now. We're just trying to follow up on a missing person's call. And it's important to know that you operated the boat. You took him there. The missing person we're looking for, you returned with the boat. And that missing person wasn't with you on the boat. So we need some answers as to how'd you get there? What happened when you got there? And when you returned here, what happened? All in a statement. Now, some people that have involvement in something will say, I'm not doing no damn statement. Okay. Then you're going to file up on your report because each person that you reach out to and talk to in a missing person investigation, they have a report number and their findings when they go and talk to each person. And each of those young men on the boat are people that you would talk to in regards to this missing person. Now, I'm not going to jump ahead I'm going to let you know what happens in a second. Let's keep going. Now, Javon Williams, one of Nolan Wells' friends who had seen him on the island on the 4th of July, said the account doesn't square with the person I knew. I've never known Nolan to stay back while his friends leave. He's always been a guy where if he rode with you, he's going to come back with you. That's always how he's been every single time. And we focused on that part when the father kept reiterating what he told his son to do. Not just once or twice, but every time he went out on the boat to go anywhere. When he went out to go to any location. When you go with a group of people, you come back with a group of people. You know, responsible teenagers aren't stupid. Responsible teenagers normally, if you tell them something over and over again, they usually pick up pretty quickly. Now, the part that I think can be the most damaging of this entire case is the use of alcohol. You see, no matter how responsible of a person you are, once you add alcohol to the scenario, you start to lower your chances of being as responsible as you would be without alcohol in your system. And let's just say alcohol and drugs. Because young people today do alcohol and drugs, or they don't do them. Let's go. We're keeping it moving here. We're keeping it moving. So let's take a look at the boat. Because the boat Nolan Wells was on was a private vessel used by his family, tracked by GPS data from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. It was not a commercial or a public service boat, but rather a personal craft owned by the boat's operator, who was Nolan's mother. So we're saying that Nolan's mom owned the boat? Does that make any sense? I read this part over and over again. It doesn't make sense. You're saying Nolan's mom owns the boat? Well, someone else was operating the boat. And I think who owns the boat really is irrelevant. An operator, an adult most likely, took this boat out with a boat full of people, was responsible for those people in the water as the boat operator, and returned back with one less person. According to the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources report, the vessel left its dock about 9:56 in the morning on July the 4th. It arrived at Horn Island at 11:14. It stayed there for 5 hours and 20-something minutes. At 4:31, when it left with a reported mechanical problem involving a failed bilge pump. Interesting. The boat then returned to its departure dock. What time? Where's the time there? Traveled to Fort Bayou and later to the Fort Bayou boat launch before being towed to the owner's residence in Mississippi. We listened to this information here. You see, Nolan Wells was there between 11:14 and 4:31. We know he's there. Problem with this is, when that boat leaves at 4:31, it doesn't have him on the boat. Or is he on the boat? Because the contradicting information between people Some say he was on the boat. Some say he was on the island talking to a young lady. This is where the red zone is. You know, you want to score a touchdown, but you got this area you got to get through to get to the end zone. In our case, the end zone is trying to figure out what happened to Nolan Wells. 11:14 to 4:31 in the afternoon. If they got there at 11:14, you're telling me he didn't take any pictures. It's a beautiful island. He didn't take any video. It's a beautiful day. 4th of July weekend was a beautiful weekend. No videos, no pictures. Now, between 11:14 and 4:31, he exited the boat without his phone. It's safe to say that people are on the shoreline. Maybe some people have dragged some refreshments and snacks and goodies on the beach, and they're having a good time. But that boat is sitting there for a long time, long enough time to be able to get him his phone if he needs his phone. We need to timestamp some of these other videos too, where they talk about they hear somebody arguing. What time was that video? Timestamped. Had to be before 4:31. And to be realistic, if someone's going to finally have some issues with each other because, you know, the alcohol beverages are starting to get you a little bit rowdy, it would have been closer to 12, 1, 2, 3 o'clock. But you got to remember, it takes 45 minutes, 30 minutes or so to get there. So if you're drinking on the way there, you get there and drink, you're going to be feeling pretty good. You're going to be feeling really good if you've been drinking. Now, this boat left at 9 o'clock. Let me reiterate that. Take a quick look at this real quick. 9:56. This boat left at 10 o'clock. And it got there at 11:14. It took an hour to get there, which is what we talked about earlier. An hour. Now, when you look at these teenagers, they're not very big people. So alcohol is going to go in and straight to the source. They're going to be feeling good after 2 or more beers. You've got a whole hour to drink it. Let's go. Let's keep it moving. This whole situation doesn't make any sense. Now, the Wells family couldn't understand why he was separate from his group of friends. They mentioned we always taught him, if you go with a group, you stay with a group. His father seems like the kind of person that's firm in regards to what you can and cannot do. Now, eventually it's going to come out. I don't know why you would want to have someone else bring it up before you bring it up, but the concern about alcohol, that's going to come up. I mean, they're going to ask the parents, did you know your son was going down there and they were just meeting and having fun? They was down there drinking. They was drinking alcohol, underage drinking. Would it be a concern? Would you still let him go if you knew this? And you know, this person has to return on that 4th of July evening. They were waiting for him to return. When he returns, you're telling me you can't smell the alcohol? Something's not adding up with that small area of silence. I'm not hearing anything. in regards to the concern that the boat operator was going out there with alcoholic beverages for all the teenagers in the picture. No comments about that. For me, that had been the first concern. First of all, why is a boat operator providing alcoholic beverages to these 4 teenagers, one who is missing? You are responsible at this point. When that person doesn't return on your boat, you have given them alcoholic beverages. And if someone goes out and gets hurt, injured, or death occurs, the law enforcement are supposed to be on top of your ass. Because your actions, which are clearly caught on video, on tape, video, whatever you want to call it, picture, this is your boat. This is the last image of them on your boat. And in their hands, 3 out of 4 of them have alcoholic beverages. This is the first person that should have been dragged in doing statements. But let me get to the good part first. As Christine Wansley's social media appeals gain traction online, several groups joined the search for Nolan, including the United Cajun Navy, a non-profit volunteer search and rescue group based in Louisiana. The group's vice president told that he spoke to several people who were at Horn Island on July 4th and described the beach as being packed with boats and people, some of whom had been drinking alcohol. If someone had fallen in the water, some strong rip currents that day may have posed a risk. Some of our images show a beautiful view of Horn Island, but as you look at that beautiful view, take a look at that water. That water out there is rough, and it isn't even a storm out there. But, in order to get involved in a rip current, you have to be in the water. So the question that's not being answered is, how did he get in the water for a strong rip current to pose a risk to him? How did he get in the water? Was he pushed in the water? If you look at our picture here, and you see this one lone black person on the beach, well, look at those boats. These are the type of boats that went out there. These boats are not going to come all the way up on the beach. There's a certain point where you have to go out into the water to get to the boat. Either swim or take your little raft, your little dinghy, whatever you got to do, and work your way over to the boat. Climb up the ladder, get on the boat, be on your way. Now, I conjured up a scenario in my mind, but it's hard to believe that this scenario doesn't have a witness. So, somehow, some way, there's only 2 boats or 1 boat left. And this very smart, athletic teenager is on the beach by himself. Which, at this point, does that make any sense? Now, the boat he's supposed to be on is already gone. So, and let me take a look at that real quick. Yeah, that boat left at 4:30-ish by the GPS. 4:30 sounds like it's time to go home. The party's over. We're not going to stay out here until sunset because they don't let you stay out there until sunset. But you've been out there all day for 5 hours in the sun. There's nowhere to eat out there. Did you bring any food? You're drinking alcoholic beverages, but do you have any water? You gotta go to the bathroom and take a number 1 or number 2. You gotta do it right there on the beach. There are no facilities for restrooms. So the question is this the scenario? this person would wait until he's the last person on the beach to ask for a ride back to the other side of the shore? This doesn't make any sense. This is the same person that was told, when you leave with people, you go back with people. Now, why would he be on the beach by himself? There's no one to talk to. Who is he communicating with? And what is on the beach that's so important that a teenager wants to stand there by themselves and enjoy? Nothing. So for you to say that this young man just decides to try to swim to this boat and doesn't make it and drowns means that the boat owner saw it happen. Don't tell me these boats weren't there and he decides he wants to try to swim back an hour away. That swim's going to take way longer than an hour at 4:30 in the afternoon. A boat takes an hour to get back. So how long do you think it's going to take to swim there? This is an athlete. He ain't no dummy. And I'm pretty sure he knows he's not going to be swimming back. Every time he's came to this island, he's taken a boat there and a boat back. So there's a boat involved in this situation. There's a boat with witnesses, or a witness. I'm pretty sure it's witnesses, because these boats aren't just going to waste their time and have one person come out there. A lot of these boats have multiple people on the boats. So if there's multiple people on a boat that see him on the shoreline, there's multiple witnesses that know what happened to this young man. But the scenario that we're looking at is that he's just standing on the beach. Everyone's left. And now he's trying to determine which boat to get into to get back home. I think it's ludicrous. Doesn't make any sense. Now, when this boat left at 4:30, the GPS doesn't show it returning back to the beach. It shows it left at 4:30 and it went straight back to the dock. That's what it's showing. Now the information we have here doesn't show what time it returned to the dock. Got all these other times, but what time did it return to the dock? Well, let's take a look at our information we got here. Common sense will tell us that if it was 9:56, they left and got to the island at 11:14, then if they departed at 4:31, they should have returned back to the dock at about 5:40. 5:40 in the afternoon. Still daylight. Now, that boat returned at 5:40. That means that at 5:40 at the island, there may have still been people on the island enjoying the island. Could Nolan have been one of those people? Very possible. They didn't bring him back. Now, there are some areas of this whole situation that are contradicting. And the contradiction is, well, Nolan did go back with somebody. But then, if he was able to get back on the boat, that means he's got access to his cell phone again. He's got access to his cell phone again. Now, doesn't necessarily mean he's got service, but I'm pretty sure if he has his cell phone, then he does have access to taking pictures, video, uh, anything versus him not having it. Now, if these guys on the boat were acting shady, what's to stop someone from hitting record on their phone if you're on the boat? Somehow he had to end up in the water. And that's where we're trying to piece two and two together with this situation. You have your cell phone, you're on the boat, and you get pushed off the boat. Would the cell phone go with you? Doesn't seem like the scenario. They left. And he might have been there and maybe tried to communicate to them. Hey, I need my cell phone. Give me my cell phone. And they're leaving, waving. That would upset anyone that realizes my only form of communication is heading out to sea. It would be upsetting. Especially if you had a couple drinks. But not to the point where you want to jump in the water and try to chase after the boat. And if you did jump in the water and try to chase after the boat, and they saw you go under the water, they're witnesses to what happened. Now, this is my scenario. Because if you do the wolf in sheep's clothing, let's just take a look at the wolf. We may have had a problem with you, but we're just gonna play a little game right there. We can't come out that far to get you, so come on in the water and swim to the boat. Well, what choice do you have? You either, now this don't necessarily have to be the boat that left him. This could be the last boat option to even get back. Sometimes you don't have a choice. This is the last boat. Everyone else is gone. Now we look at this scenario, and to be honest with you, this young man is smarter, much smarter than to be standing on this beach by himself, being drawn into the water by one last boat that's waiting to take anyone back to shore because they happen to be there. But this is the only last situational scenario that we haven't covered. But you can imagine them saying, well, yeah, we'll give you a ride back, no problem. Just swim over to the boat. Trusting you jump in the water and start to swim over to the boat, and they kind of move the boat a little bit away from you as if they're jokingly, being funny. And you hear them say, yeah, come on, we got you. Just playing with you. And he swims further to get to this boat so he can get back home. And they kind of move forward a little bit more with the boat, putting more distance between him and the boat, laughing and making it seem like it's a funny scenario. But see, at this point, anyone should be able to say, you know what, I bat off by myself. I'm not going any further in this water to try to catch this boat back. I'll just wait until someone else comes. So worst case scenario is he goes out too far in this water and starts to lose his bearing in swimming and starts to go under. And this boat does nothing to help him. No attempt This boat watches him go underwater. It's a possibility. Because you're all the way out there in the middle of nowhere, and who's going to be able to correct you? It's funny in games for you, but someone out in that water has lost their life because you want to play games with the options that are available. That's the last of the scenarios we covered. Because if the main boat that took him there is just straight up lying and they did something to him on the way back, it had to have been right as soon as they left. Because you take him out too far, he's not gonna wash up like he did along the island. He was very, very close to the island area they were patrolling to be able to look for him and find him as he floated up after 2 days. Very close to the island. So to go out further out into the ocean and then dump him somewhere doesn't sound like he would show up so close to the island. So whatever happened close to the island. And that scenario makes sense. Now, when you look at some of those pictures of boats out there, there's pictures where there are at least 100 boats out there. 100 boats. Is everyone paying attention to everyone else to make sure they're safe? I would say no. Anything's possible. When people are not being responsible for other people, and you add alcohol to this, you don't want to put your life in the hands of others that are under the influence. So this situation, true friends that take your son or daughter in their care will treat your son or daughter as if they were their son or daughter. They wouldn't let anything happen to them, God willing. And if something did happen, you'd be the first one to know before anyone else that something has happened to your son or daughter in my care. You can debate about it all you want to. You can go up and down the corridors of life, but the integrity behind this is firm. Firm as hell. And any woman that doesn't stand by another mother when her child is missing was never your friend to begin with. ZZ109FM Talk Radio. This is Elsie Jenkins. We covered some stuff today. Hopefully it'll spark some ideas in your mind as to what the hell happened to Nolan. Take care and watch over each other.